Brothers and sisters, I want you to understand something. Your value in this world, in this life, is not determined by the fleeting affections of others, nor by the shallow praise of people whose hearts are unstable. What you do, what you stand for, and the way you carry yourself will either elevate you or diminish you in the eyes of the world, but more importantly, it will define your value in the eyes of the one who matters most. Today, many live in such a way that they are desperate for attention, constantly seeking affirmation, approval, and recognition. But let me tell you this, the most valuable thing you can do in this world is not to make yourself available to everyone who calls your name, not to make yourself the object of everyone's affection or attention. No, the most valuable thing you can do is to be so distinct, so purposeful, so unwavering in your convictions that when you do speak, when you do act, it is felt with weight, with conviction, with authority. And if the world should miss you, let it be because they have come to recognize that your presence is something not easily replaced, that your actions have a lasting impact. Let them miss you. Not because you are prideful or self-centered, but because your presence was never one of mere convenience. It was one of substance. It was one that brought value, brought truth, brought something to the table that could not easily be dismissed. Now consider this. People today are content with being mere distractions. They become like the noise of a crowded room, constant, ever-present, but ultimately meaningless. They fill the air with their words, but those words carry no depth. They engage in activities, but those activities are rooted in nothing of eternal significance. And when they leave, no one even notices. They vanish into the abyss of forgetfulness because they never bothered to be anything more than what the world expected of them. But those who have value, those who leave an impact, they do not chase after the approval of every passing wind. No, they understand that in order to raise their value, in order for their absence to be felt, they must first make their presence distinct. They must live according to principles that are foreign to the world, principles that are not dictated by the culture around them, but by a deeper, higher calling. A person who carries value is a person who understands the importance of discipline. They know that their time, their energy, their words, and their actions are not to be squandered on the trivial. They are not to be spread thin in the service of the many, but rather in the service of that which truly matters. They give their all, not to entertain or appease the masses, but to live a life that bears fruit, fruit that will last, fruit that will endure beyond the fleeting moments of today's approval. Too many have been caught up in the madness of being constantly available. They live to please others, to be constantly on display, to be constantly present in every social interaction, in every conversation, in every scenario. They are afraid of silence, afraid of standing alone, afraid of the idea that someone might look around and realize they are no longer present. But in doing so, they lose the very essence of what makes them valuable. They lose the strength that comes from standing firm on their own 2 feet, from choosing what is right, from making hard decisions. Understand this, there is a high cost to always being available. When you make yourself too accessible, when you drop everything for the convenience of others, you begin to lose your edge. You begin to lose the depth that comes from being deliberate, from choosing where to invest your energy, from choosing when to speak and when to remain silent. You are no longer a force to be reckoned with because your presence no longer means anything. You have become common, ordinary, nothing more than a passing interest. But when you raise your value, when you learn to step back, when you learn to prioritize what truly matters, your life becomes an offering, a powerful statement that demands respect. It is in the absence of the superficial that you begin to understand your true worth. When you choose to be selective with your time, when you choose to only invest in that which brings eternal value, the world will start to take notice. They will miss you, not because you are arrogant or dismissive, but because your absence will be a reminder that something precious has been lost. People will begin to realize that your presence is not something that can be taken for granted. It is not something that can be casually demanded or expected. Your presence will become a reflection of your convictions, a reflection of the high standard you have set for yourself. And when you walk into a room, when you speak, when you act, others will understand that they are witnessing something rare, something that has not been watered down by the distractions and the noise of the world. In a world that thrives on instant gratification, where people are constantly chasing after the next moment of fleeting pleasure, it is a rare thing to find someone who is steady, who is committed to their purpose, who is unwavering in their principles. And it is this rarity that raises their value. Understand, brothers and sisters, it is not about making people miss you out of pride. It is about living in such a way that your value is evident not by your presence, but by the lasting effect you have on others. When you walk away, let it be that those who remain are left to ponder the weight of your words, the depth of your actions, the meaning behind your silence. Let your absence be a reminder that what you bring is not something that can easily be replaced. The world will tell you to be constantly available, to always be present, to always be at the beck and call of others. But what does this do for you? What does it do for your soul? Does it build you up? Does it draw you closer to the eternal purpose for which you were created? No. It only leaves you empty, drained, and looking for the next source of affirmation. Let me ask you this. When was the last time you truly stood firm in who you are, regardless of the pressure to conform? When was the last time you refused to compromise, refused to be shaped by the world, refused to become just another noise in the crowd? I urge you, brothers and sisters, to consider your value. It is not in how many people can get your attention or how many people find you entertaining. It is not in how many friends you have or how much praise you can gather. Your value is found in your commitment to what is true, in your consistency in living a life of substance, in your unwavering pursuit of that which is eternal. When you raise your value, you are not raising your ego. No, you are raising your purpose, raising the standard for your life. You are declaring to the world that you will no longer be just another voice in the crowd, another distraction in the world. You are stepping into the identity that God has given you, a person of purpose, of substance, of eternal worth. And when you live in this way, when you refuse to be shaken by the demands of the world, your absence will be felt. People will miss you, not because you have made yourself absent on purpose, but because they will recognize that your value is something that cannot easily be replaced. It is a value that is rooted in something far greater than the fleeting desires of this world. You must live with such conviction, such purpose, that when you walk into the room, your presence changes the atmosphere, and when you leave, the world will know that something precious has been lost. But do not be discouraged, because it is in this that you will find your worth. When others look around and realize that they can no longer find what they took for granted, brothers and sisters, let them miss you. But more importantly, let your life be a testimony of a person who has raised their value through a life of purpose, conviction, and faithfulness to the calling that has been placed upon them. Do not live for the approval of men. Do not live for the momentary accolades that fade with time. Live for the eternal. Live with purpose. And when the world looks around and notices your absence, let it be because they understand that what you carried was not something easily replaced. Live in such a way that your value is undeniable. Live in such a way that when they miss you, they are reminded of the weight, the substance, and the purpose that you carried with you, the lasting impact you made in this world, and the eternal value you will carry with you into eternity. The speech emphasizes that true value comes from living with purpose, conviction, and discipline. Instead of constantly seeking approval or attention from others, one's value is raised when they choose to live distinctively, prioritizing what truly matters and making their presence meaningful. The speech stresses that raising one's value means making one's presence felt, so that when they are absent, their absence is deeply noticed. This is not about pride, but about living in such a way that others recognize the lasting effect of one's actions, words, and conviction. True value is found in the lasting impact of one's life, not in constant availability. True value is not determined by how frequently one is available or how often one is called upon by others. The world has become a place where being accessible at all times, always available and ready to serve, is often mistaken for significance. But what the world fails to understand is that constant availability dilutes the weight of your value. The true definition of value is rooted in purpose and substance, not the shallow notion of mere presence or constant attention seeking. The human tendency today is to define someone's worth by their level of accessibility or the number of people they can please at a given time. We live in a culture where instant gratification, short-term interactions, and continuous engagement are all celebrated. It's common to see people pride themselves on how many hours they dedicate to others, how often they respond to messages, or how available they are for every event or social gathering. But in reality, all this does is make one common, predictable, and in many ways, replaceable. This is the heart of the issue. If your value is determined by how much you make yourself available to others, you have completely missed the point of living a life of significance. In contrast, value is found in living according to a purpose, a deeper calling that transcends momentary desires and fleeting attention. Purpose drives the decisions you make, the actions you take, and the way you approach life. When you know your purpose, when you live according to it, your life gains substance. Substance comes from what you stand for, the principles you uphold, and the consistency of your actions, no matter the circumstance. Substance is not concerned with appeasing others for the sake of their fleeting approval. It is about living with integrity, fulfilling a higher calling, and bringing lasting value to the world. A person who understands their purpose is never chasing after the empty validation of those who don't know what true value is. They don't measure their worth by how many people are pleased by their actions or words. Instead, they gauge their value by the substance they bring into the world, by the lasting impact of their decisions, the integrity with which they live, and the legacy they leave behind. In this way, their value is not tied to their ability to constantly be available or serve others' fleeting desires, but to their unwavering commitment to what matters most. This is the foundation of real worth. Let's consider the idea of substance for a moment. Substance is what allows a person to stand firm, even when everything around them is shaking. It's the ability to endure hardship and remain committed to the things that are important, even when the world might be telling you to follow a different path. Substance is not something that is easily found in the rush of daily life or in the pursuit of popularity or external validation. It's something that comes from within, a deep understanding of who you are and why you exist. People with substance don't simply follow trends, they create them. They don't live to please others, they live to fulfill a higher calling. When a person lives with substance, their actions are not swayed by the whims of the world. They act according to their convictions, even when it's inconvenient. They stand by their principles, even when it's unpopular. And because of this, their value is not defined by how often they are needed or how frequently others call upon them. Rather, it is defined by their consistency, their integrity, and their unwavering commitment to their purpose. Purpose, when understood and embraced, sets the foundation for a life of substance. It provides direction and clarity, giving one a sense of who they are and what they are meant to accomplish. Without purpose, life becomes aimless and directionless, like a ship without a rudder. But when one understands their purpose, when they live according to it, their value becomes clear, not because they are constantly available to the world's demands, but because they are committed to something greater than themselves. Consider for a moment the life of a person with purpose. Their value is not dependent on being seen, on being heard, on being constantly available to those around them. Their value is derived from the way they live, from the principles they uphold, from the way they consistently show up in the world. A person with purpose doesn't need the constant approval of others to feel worthy because they are already rooted in something far deeper, their mission, their values, and their faith. They don't give in to the pressures of constantly being at the beck and call of others. Instead, they give their energy and attention to what aligns with their purpose, the things that truly matter in the grand scheme of life. and we live in a way that is constantly available to the demands of others, we sacrifice our time and energy for things that may not have lasting value. There is no true fulfillment in being constantly needed or constantly present in people's lives if those interactions are shallow, self-serving, or driven by temporary needs. Availability without purpose results in emptiness because it takes away the one thing that gives life meaning: substance. You can be available to people all day, every day, but if you are not adding true value, not contributing anything of lasting significance, then your presence is no more valuable than a passing moment. Purpose allows us to filter out distractions, to prioritize what matters. It helps us discern when to be available and when to step back. It teaches us to say no to the things that would dilute our value and to say yes to the things that align with our calling. This ability to discern, to choose carefully, and to focus on what truly matters is what creates a life of substance. And when we live with substance, the world may not always recognize this. In a world that values popularity, instant responses, and constant availability, living with purpose and substance may sometimes seem countercultural. But this is exactly why it is so important. The world's standards of success, being constantly busy, always available, always serving others' demands, are shallow. True value is found in living differently and choosing to prioritize the eternal over the temporary, the substantial over the superficial. When we live in this way, our value is not only raised in the eyes of others, but also in our own eyes. There is a deep sense of fulfillment that comes from living a life of purpose and substance. It is a life that is not determined by what others think or what others want from us, but by what we know to be true, by the calling we have received and by the work we are committed to doing in this world. When we live with purpose, we become more than just another face in the crowd. We become distinct, noticeable, and impactful. Our presence is felt because it carries weight that is rooted in substance. The world may often tell us that we must be available for everything and everyone, that our worth is defined by how much we are needed. But the reality is, being available to everything and everyone only weakens our value. When we say yes to every demand, every invitation, every call, we say no to what truly matters. We allow ourselves to be spread thin, to be drained by superficial interactions, and to lose focus on the things that are of eternal significance. But when we learn to live with purpose, when we learn to focus on what truly matters, we elevate our value. We choose to be present for the things that align with our calling, the things that will make a lasting difference. We do not waste our time on the trivial, but invest it in what brings eternal fruit. And in doing so, we raise our value not by how often we are present or how much we are needed, but by the depth and substance we bring into the world. Purpose and substance are the keys to living a life of true worth. They are the foundations upon which lasting value is built. When we live with purpose, we are not driven by the need for constant attention or validation. We are driven by something far greater, by a higher calling, by a desire to live in accordance with the principles we hold dear, and by a commitment to leaving a legacy that transcends the temporary. So do not be swayed by the world's false definitions of success and value. Do not allow yourself to be caught in the trap of being constantly available, of living for the approval of others, or of seeking validation in the superficial. Instead, live with purpose, live with substance, and in doing so, you will raise your value, not by being available at every turn, but by living a life that is meaningful, impactful, and true. There is a profound power in absence, one that is often underestimated in a world that places such a high premium on presence. The world encourages us to be seen, to be active, to be constantly present in the lives of others. We are taught that the more we are around, the more value we bring, the more important we must be. But what if the opposite were true? What if true value and significance were not measured by how much we are around, but by how much impact we leave when we are? Absence creates impact because it leaves a void, an emptiness that others can feel, a space that speaks volumes even when we are no longer present. When we are always around, always accessible, always there to fulfill the needs and desires of others, our presence can become so commonplace that it is taken for granted. It loses its significance because it is always expected. It becomes a part of the background noise, something that others come to rely on without truly appreciating its worth. However, when we are absent, the dynamics shift. Our absence forces others to confront the reality of what they are missing, of what we once provided. It causes a moment of reflection, of realization that what we brought to the table was not trivial but deeply meaningful. It is in absence that the true measure of value can often be seen. Consider how much people often miss what they had only after it is gone. They may not have fully recognized the significance of something while it was there, but once it is no longer available, they come to understand its weight. Absence in this way has a clarifying effect. It makes us more aware of the things that matter, the things we once took for granted, the people we failed to appreciate in the moment. Absence magnifies the importance of what is missing. It creates a longing, a gap that cannot easily be filled because what was lost was never truly understood until it was no longer there. We often see this in relationships. When someone is always present, there can be an expectation of their involvement, their support, or their attention. Their presence is expected and their absence is rarely felt until it is permanent. But when that person is absent, whether due to distance, circumstance, or choice, the void they leave behind is palpable. It is in the absence that we come to understand their role in our lives. Their absence is not just a physical one. It is emotional, psychological, and spiritual. It creates a space that forces us to reflect on the impact they had on our lives. We are no longer able to take their presence for granted, and in their absence, we see more clearly how much they contributed. This is the beauty of absence. It forces us to confront the truth of what we have lost, and in doing so, it amplifies the significance of what once was. The impact of absence can be so much more powerful than the mere presence of someone who does not make a real difference. This is why it is often said that sometimes people don't truly understand what they have until it is gone. The absence makes the heart grow fonder because it is in the absence that we come to realize the value that was always there, but we failed to recognize. But absence is not just about relationships. It applies to every area of life. Take, for example, the absence of certain things or people in the world. When a leader steps down, when a significant figure is no longer involved, when an influential voice goes silent, there is a noticeable shift. People feel the change, they sense the gap, and they begin to reflect on the impact that individual had on their lives, their community, or their cause. Sometimes it is only in their absence that people realize the true weight of their contribution. It is not until they are no longer there that the legacy they left behind becomes evident. Absence creates impact because it forces those around us to pause, to reassess, and to reflect on the role we played in their lives or in the world. It is a moment of reckoning. It brings attention to what once was and makes it clear that something of value is missing. The absence becomes a reminder of the importance of what was there. It underscores the significance of our contributions, not by how often we showed up, but by the lasting effect we left behind. But how do we ensure that our absence will have this kind of impact? It comes from living with intention, from being purposeful in the way we engage with others and with the world. When we give our time, our energy, and our presence to things that truly matter, we make a lasting impact. It's not about being everywhere, being at every event, or fulfilling every request. It's about being deliberate, being selective about where and how we invest our energy. When we live with purpose, when we focus on what truly matters, our presence becomes more significant. And when we step back, when we choose to be absent, the impact of our presence is felt even more acutely. People will miss us, not because we were constantly available, but because we were purposeful in the way we contributed. We made our presence count. And now, in our absence, that impact is deeply felt. Absence creates impact because it is a reminder of the fleeting nature of life. It reminds us that nothing is permanent, and that includes our time, our energy, and our presence. When we are constantly present, we can become complacent, taking for granted that others will always be there, that we will always have the time to make a difference, or that our contributions will always be accepted. But life is unpredictable. People move, circumstances change, and we are not guaranteed to always have the time we think we have. In this way, absence is a call to action. It reminds us to live intentionally, to make the most of the time we have, and to focus on creating meaningful, lasting contributions. It teaches us not to wait for tomorrow, not to put off the things that truly matter, because we are not always promised another day to make an impact. Absence also creates impact because it underscores the importance of quality over quantity. Being present all the time, showing up for everything, and being involved in every conversation does not necessarily equate to making a significant impact. In fact, sometimes the more we try to be everywhere, the less meaningful our presence becomes. We spread ourselves thin, and the quality of our contributions diminishes. But when we are selective in where and how we invest our time, when we choose to be absent from the distractions and focus on the things that matter most, our presence becomes more powerful. We create space for others to notice, to reflect, and to appreciate the value we bring. Our absence highlights the importance of what we contribute, and in doing so, it amplifies our value. Absence, then, is not something to be feared. It is not a loss, but an opportunity to create a deeper impact. It forces people to recognize our worth, to acknowledge the significance of what we bring, and to reflect on the contribution we make to the world. It reminds us that our time and energy are precious, and that we must be intentional in how we spend them. Absence allows us to leave a legacy, one that is not defined by how many times we showed up or how many people we served, but by the lasting effect of our actions, our words, and our contributions. Absence creates impact because it teaches us the value of presence. It is only through absence that we come to realize how much we value the presence of others, how much we rely on their contributions, and how much their absence affects us. It teaches us not to take people, moments, or opportunities for granted, but to appreciate the fleeting nature of life and the impact we can have in the time we have. When we are absent, we give others the chance to reflect, to appreciate, and to understand the weight of what we once brought. And in doing so, we leave behind an impact that is felt long after we are gone. Absence forces others to reckon with the reality of what they had, and in doing so, it elevates our worth. Our value is not determined by how often we show up or how many people we serve, but by the depth and substance of what we bring when we are present. And when we step away, when we create space, that impact is only magnified